Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Pebal Francis Pebolo. Again, we are back today talking about something very contentious, and I'm with my two colleagues.
Emmanuel Oriada as usual, MDQ Healthcare and Medical Area.
Thank you. You're most welcome. Yes.
Hello everybody, my name is Aifaru Jacqueline, midwife, Gulu University Department of Reproductive Health, Assimilation Laboratory. Thank you, I'm glad to be here again.
Thank you. So we are talking about something contentious again today. We want to address issues related to teenage pregnancy. Most of the time, teenage pregnancy comes because there's teenage sex. And most of the teenagers, as you are aware, they're actually at school. So I want to raise a question, and I want to be sure how my colleagues will say this. I want them either to disagree or agree with the statement that I'm going to bring forward and try to give some explanation. Handing out condoms or having them in the bathrooms at high school creates a climate that makes sex for teenagers the norm, and then makes abstinence something that is difficult to make at schools or among the teenagers. What do you think? We'll start with the lady.
Yeah, I think it sounds like a
Wow, this is, I'm in a hot seat. To me, I think there are two sides of the coin, but I would start with a disagree. My most important point of disagreement is that having sex is a choice. And now choices are guided by very many things. One of the very many things is upbringing and the moral values that are being instilled in a child. So if a child has grown up with values in a way that causes them to think that teenage sex is not right, putting condoms in the bathrooms or giving it to them will not necessarily send them to have sex. So I would think I disagree with that for that reason. Of course, there are several other reasons for why I would disagree with that. Also, I would want to agree with that, especially because teenagers are in a transition phase of their life, the adolescence. So adolescence comes with a lot of experimentation. They are trying to find out who they are. They want to try out new things. They want to try to do what they see. Children exposed to a lot in the 21st century. There is social media, there is the TV, there are billboards, they're listening to radios, there are songs they're listening to, they're interacting with friends. And so there is a lot of influence on their decisions. And there's a lot of peer pressure when you look at in teenage interactions, especially in schools and friendships. So putting condoms out there in the bathrooms would actually also, on the other side of the coin, cause them to want to experiment how it actually works. So that would also lead them to having the teenage sex. Yes, that's my opinion. I know that you have other opinions.
Thank you. Thank you. Of course, the norm is very important. If someone has already been taught that something is bad until a particular time, and that's something that is supposed to be done in our family, we have to teach our young ones to wait until marriage, if that is possible. But of course, in a society where, especially, the structure of the family has already been broken down to a nuclear family, and then the father and the mother fears talking about this to their children. It's a big issue. In the traditional African society, we used to have the aunties used to actually guide a lot the young girls, and then also some of the guys, the uncles guides the young boys to do this. But I think that's where there's a problem. In some culture, I think in Bongana is still there, the Senga is still a bit active. Yes. But also in the Acholi land here, I think the wire system is a bit broken, but it's also probably a functional entity. I don't know what you think about this statement.
Yeah, thanks again for the opportunity. I think I would not just agree with the statement, but I would strongly agree with the statement. I really think providing the condoms in the bathrooms would encourage early exposure to sex and would make abstinence extremely hard, okay, even for the ones who are being nurtured well. One is that generally we wouldn't want children to have sex at school, okay? Because looking at the settings of our schools, generally we have the boys living on one wing of the school and then the girls living on the other end. We don't have any appropriate place for having sex. And also given that as much as it's a child and a child probably interacting, but it still remains illegal. They're defiling each other. I don't know how that crime would be called. A lawyer would correct me. I think it's entirely inappropriate. I would compare it to an engine. If there is an engine and then it doesn't have the fuel to run. Okay, so the engine here is the desire to have sex. Okay, it doesn't have the fuel to run. It won't start at all. But then if you provide the fuel, if you avail the fuel, the paraphernalia for having sex, you provide the condoms. And then by providing the condoms, you're indirectly saying we allow you. We acknowledge that you're old enough to have the sex. That's why you're providing you with what you need. So you're giving the other aspect of the fuel, which is sort of the indirect consent, the consent by conduct. By providing condoms, you're telling them, I think it's very fine, go ahead with it, okay? So it's like you're providing the fuel, and then I don't think there is anything that's going to stop that engine from combusting and then from going running, okay? And also there's a question of exposure, because some children haven't really considered having sex. They might have heard about it, but they haven't probably imagined what sex might look like. Because probably the environments in which they live, it's almost impossible for them to witness either directly or indirectly what sex might look like. But then if you try to normalize it, to bring these condoms in school, and then children are using them in school, these who haven't witnessed such a phenomenon also get the opportunity to now see. And like you mentioned, there is a bit of curiosity. I wonder what that feels like. So someone might actually end up trying it out. I also have a notion that these children do not actually have sex in schools. Because if you look at the statistics, I think the teenage pregnancies tend to shoot up during the holidays, as very evidenced by the COVID lockdown. Because during the COVID lockdown, they were not in school, but rather in the community, where they actually have more opportunities to have sex. So it appears to me that they don't really have the sex that leads to pregnancy at school, but most of the time when they come out of school. So I think school is a wrong place to target, but probably we could target them when they come at home. Of course, I would not entirely disagree with provision of condoms, but I think the methodology needs to be adjusted. Not putting it in the bathrooms, but probably if I'm a teacher and then I'm searching a suitcase of a child who is coming in to school at the beginning of the term and then I find some condoms, I think I wouldn't confiscate them, and probably I would let him stay with them, but not publicizing the whole thing. So I think that's why I would strongly agree with this statement. So probably we could look into other methods of provision of the condoms and also other timings, okay? Yeah, but not, in bathrooms like it's okay, go ahead and do it now.
Yeah, very interesting, especially the COVID idea. I think I remember we had a discussion about this, and one of the RDCs in northern Uganda put a very clear statement that it is the parents who are not taking care of their children. Because when the children were at school, the government was protecting them. When the children were at home, the children started getting pregnant. So it is the parents. So probably, as you said, the condoms should actually be in the bathroom at home. Because if you cannot talk to your son, yes, why don't you provide condoms? Leave it there. Yep. Let them find there and then say, But for me, I wouldn't feel embarrassed. I will talk to my son and tell them that, yes, if what I do not want from you is to have sex. But should there be a situation that you cannot avoid, okay? Get condoms. Don't get HIV, don't get someone pregnant. I would be happy to talk about it. I have only boys. I talk about boys. I don't know about girls. Okay, there's some situation here. Maybe we need to discuss this. Okay. You have a 16-year-old student tells you that they had sex but didn't use a condom because they were too embarrassed to buy them or go to public places to acquire them. How do you feel now? Emma, you would agree.
Yeah, I agree. How do I feel? I don't know. Of course, my notion wasn't entirely disagreeing
Yes,
with provision of condoms, but
Yes,
then the avenue for provision, okay, and the mode of delivery. Of course, I would agree there is a lot of stigma that comes with purchasing, even let alone a child, even an adult like myself. You know, you walk into a drug shop or a supermarket, and then there is a whole line of people, and then you're like, "Hi, what?" it's quite high. So I imagine what
the other one. Then you first
so I imagine what a child would go through. So of course, yeah, there is definitely a gap in that area. But I think there are already steps that we are trying to take to address that. One approach, which may not really be in bathrooms in schools, but I think in a lot of public bathrooms you find them there. And actually, even as you walk into some offices, you find a corner somewhere with a box of condoms that you can.
in offices.
Yes,
Okay.
in offices. I've seen it in some government offices. You
Oh,
walk in and
that's
then
interesting.
in a hidden corner somewhere. It's easy noticeable, but also it's a bit private where you can go pick and pocket and walk on like nothing ever happened at all. But then also we would need to look into the discussion of how to nurture this positive environment that kind of is respectful for everyone, not judgmental. I mean, if you're selling condoms, just simply sell them, or if you're buying something else, just let the other person buy what they want, and then they go on with it. So I think let's look for a way of making it easy to access the condoms, but without sort of promoting the act or publicizing it. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Ah,
A 16-year-old.
it's
Sexually active,
16-year-old is
but they're not using
sexually
condoms.
active and they have not used any condoms. Of course, the mother in me would be angry. The mother in me would not be very happy, but the healthcare provider in me, of course, it has happened. There's nothing I can do about it, but there's something I can do about the future,
Yeah.
future occurrences. So I could sit down and talk to such a child and give them different options of different options. They could abstain. Yes, which is the gold standard for me, especially for teenagers. Abstinence is very important. It would save you from so much, from pregnancies, from infections, and from any other trauma that comes with teenage sex or the consequences of it. However, they could as well use condoms so that we can prevent any other consequences of having unprotected sex, infections, pregnancy, and any other that I may not mention now. Also, if they're in a situation where they can't avoid having sex, because in Uganda we know that there are teenagers, the 14-year-olds that are literally married, they're heading a family, they're having children. So if that is a 16-year-old who is having unprotected sex, I would as well ask them to be faithful. So the ABC still applies to all of them depending on the context of who they are and what situation they are in their lives. So for me, that ABC, I would talk to them about it. Then they can decide what they want for themselves.
Thank you so much. I think the ABC intervention actually worked very well during the HIV pandemic. Of course, we have to abstain, and that's actually very important for young children. They have to abstain as much as possible. And then, of course, there, as you said, there are some teenagers heading families. They're already actually married. Probably they need to be faithful. And for the other people, if they cannot abstain or you being faithful, for those who are already married, definitely they have to protect themselves. As for this case, it is important to find out how long they have had sex. Maybe there's some intervention that can occur. You know, there are a lot of children now born with congenital HIV, And that means that they can actually reach the age of 16 or even more when they're actually healthy, and they can actually risk infecting other children. And that's something that you need to look at. Probably also you need to, if it has happened quite earlier, it would be good to look at maybe post-exposure prophylaxis. PEP could actually work for them. And then probably you need to look at a way of preventing a pregnancy, a teenage pregnancy, if they've already had sex. So the time interval is very important, and then also that would help you to prevent further action. Then you need to do something about that. Someone who has already started being sexually active, sometimes it's not that easy to stop them.
Yeah.
Yes, so probably there should be an intervention to help them actually prevent other problems that might arise because of sexual activity. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much, viewers, and we're happy that we shall be back again with another controversial issue.